Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Hey there, my name's Dan Abel, and I'm applying for the Eco Challenge. I'm the captain of Team Able Ables. The name comes from our last name, A-B-E-L, and obviously we are able to do your little race in Fiji, just like I did 19 years ago. So a little bit of background about myself. I've done about 80 adventure races and all sorts of finishes from first place to back of the pack, learned a lot, had several great teammates. But two of my favorite teammates have actually been my daughters, Ashley and Lauren, who are currently 22 and 24 years old, who are also team members of this team, hence the name Able Ables.
My name is Ashley Abel. I'm 24 years old and I live here in Boise, Idaho. Adventure racing has been a huge part of my life for as long as I can remember. I want to do Eco Challenge because I've always wanted to do it. Finishing an expedition race, crossing the finish line with my dad and my sister would mean the world to me. It's a huge thing on my bucket list, on all of our bucket lists, to be able to do a big race. This is the race that we would get to do.
My name is Lauren Abel. I'm 22 years old and I go to Boise State University. I would like to do this race because adventure racing has been a huge part of my life. It's what I've grown up knowing and watching and going to events, and I think that it would be a really awesome opportunity to be able to follow in my dad's footsteps and race with my family.
Hi, my name is Kim Morse. I have been adventure racing since 1998. I got started in Southern California with some office people that wanted me to do a 3 to 6 hour race and didn't know anything about mountain biking or kayaking, but knew I could run. Started doing long distance races, meaning expedition races that are 7 to 10 days long. New Zealand, Eco Challenge New Zealand was my first one. I was super excited because it had horseback riding, and even though I couldn't really do all the other disciplines very well, hooked up with Dan and some other friends and quickly started training and absolutely just fell in love with the sport.
My name is Allison Abel. I've been married to Dan Abel for 25 years. 20 years ago, Dan found his passion for adventure racing. At the time, we had 2 kids, 2 girls, and we started traipsing around the United States following Dad on adventure races.
So behind me is a finisher's blanket that I've got, which basically represents about 70 of the 80 races that I've done, spanning over 15, 20 years. As you can see, there's 2 races in the middle here that are near and dear to my heart. One is Eco Challenge New Zealand, and the other one is Eco Challenge Fiji 2002. We crossed the finish line in 19th place in Eco Challenge Fiji 2002, and the first 2 people that I hugged were my daughters. At the time, they were 4 and 6 years old. Gave them a big hug, and it was one of the best moments of my life.
My memory of Fiji as a kid is completely different from the stories that I hear from my dad, and seeing pictures of me as a kid on the beach and remembering the few moments that I do remember from 2002, it's completely different from the stories of him in the jungle, and I have always wished and look forward to the time that I get that opportunity to live in some of those experiences that he had. And so I think that this would be a great opportunity for us.
A really huge memory for me is hiring a Jeep with another racer's wife, and we were going to go to the bike transition, which was in the middle of the island. And we didn't know if we were going to make it, but it was worth a chance because we didn't get to see them at all so far in the race. Mm-hmm. And so this other wife and I, and this driver of this Jeep, a local Fijian, drove 2 hours in the middle of nowhere, sugarcane fields and small farms, and we actually got to see Dan and the team at the bike transition. And it was such a pivotal moment in our relationship because he was so happy to see me and so surprised, and I was so happy to see him. And for the opportunity to go back to Fiji and have my daughters race with my husband is just brings tears to my eyes.
My mom is the toughest woman I know. She has been supporting my dad doing this for over 20 years. And I can't think of a better person to see when I get to transition areas. And when I get to checkpoints. It's just knowing that I'm gonna see her will make me wanna go faster and make me wanna do better.
My mom has been the #1 supporter for our family, and she told me the story about when my dad said he wanted to do Fiji, and she was like, it's in my vows, I'll follow you wherever. And so many people joked around with her, like, is this where you thought your vows were going to take you, into the middle of the Fijian jungle, following your husband through this crazy race? And she always jokes that no, but it's been so long and it's become her reality of just being the absolute backbone of our family in so many ways other than racing. But specifically in racing, I know that for my dad, seeing my mom, after a few days of racing is just something that gets him through. And I think it'll definitely get my sister and I through as well, is just seeing her and knowing that she's waiting for us, and that we have all the trust in the world that no matter what transition area we show up in, no matter how in the middle of nowhere it is, like, my mom will always be there. And these crazy little campers or trucks or whatever vehicle she can rent or get her hands on, she will figure out a way to get it to the transition area when we get there. So that's something that I look forward to experiencing as well.
I've been best friends with Dan since, I don't even know, it's been over 20 years. He and I have done countless of races, short distance, long distance. We've DNF'd, we've won first place, we've kind of seen it all.
Some of my first really concrete memories are of me and my brother and sister following around my dad doing various races with my mom supporting him, and trying to read maps and figure out where the next transition area was going to be, and getting there first and waiting hours and trying to decipher which team was them, even though all we could see was tiny little specks way far in the distance. And we spent so much time just in the middle of nowhere, and I loved it. I found it was crazy that other kids weren't doing that, and I think it's really funny because whenever I would tell them about adventure racing and we'd try to explain it, we always said it was an off-road triathlon that you didn't know where you were going and you had to kind of figure it out, and people looked at me like I was pretty crazy, and they'd ask why would someone do that. When I told my dad that, his answer was always the same. He'd always say, if they have to ask why, then they'll never understand.
We had this one race where we called ourselves the have-beens and the will-bees. So my sister and I were the will-bees because we were obviously young, and my dad and one of his old teammates were the have-beens. And I just think that there are so many stories like that we have as a family, of situations where he's racing and teaching us all of his ways. I mean, everything I've learned about adventure racing is from him.
So Eco Challenge Fiji is kind of bittersweet for me. I did it 17 years ago with a strong team. We did not finish. One of our teammates got sick and we only made it about 5 days. But it's bittersweet for me because my best friend Dan, he didn't pick me for his Eco Challenge Fiji team. And so I will never forget standing in the dark, crying, watching his team cross the finish line without me on it. And so for Dan and I think that's like the one thing that we just need to put to bed in our friendship, that we both crossed the finish line at Eco Fiji. Racing with Ashley and Lauren is going to put a completely different emotional component, I think, into our team that I've never experienced and that Dan certainly has never experienced. Both of the girls are natural athletes and super experienced in what they've done with their dad and me in past races, but just not to this length. And I think it's going to be interesting, it's like two people that you dearly care about if they get hurt or they're suffering versus someone maybe you've only trained with for 6 months, they're kind of a newer teammate, and maybe someone that you don't keep in touch with after the race. It's like, this is family for Dan, and the girls are like family to me.
So in conclusion, I'm 48 years old, born and raised in Southern California. My wife and family and I moved to Boise, Idaho about 5 years ago because we wanted to be closer to the outdoors, and Boise, Idaho is on the doorstep of the Rocky Mountains. We love hiking, skiing, mountain bike riding, road biking, kayaking, whitewater, rappelling, all the disciplines that are in this sport. With my experience and our team's passion for this sport and love of the outdoors, really looking forward to competing in Eco Challenge Fiji.